Today, we are diving deep into a story that is absolutely blowing up online. We're going to break down a whole series of viral videos and some pretty startling reports that are alleging widespread fraud inside Ohio's publicly funded programs. So let's get right into it.
So our investigation kicks off with some really wild questions. I mean, how on earth do empty buildings, a potential billion-dollar fraud scheme, and a United Nations ambassador all connect back to a handful of daycare centers in Columbus, Ohio? Well, according to our sources, the details are pretty alarming.
You know, the big question floating around here is whether Ohio is on its way to becoming Minnesota 2.0. And if you're not familiar, that's a reference to a massive fraud scheme in Minnesota where literally hundreds of millions were siphoned out of a federally funded child nutrition program. Now, investigators are saying they see the exact same playbook being run in Ohio.
To really get why people are making that Minnesota 2.0 comparison, you've got to understand the context. Columbus, Ohio is home to the nation's second largest Somali population, right around 60,000 people. And guess who's number one? Minnesota. So you can see why these parallels are being drawn.
Okay, so this whole story really caught fire when citizen journalists started showing up at these publicly funded daycare facilities. They just wanted to see for themselves, you know? Is taxpayer money actually funding centers full of kids, or is it just going to empty buildings?
And what they found, which they documented in a ton of online videos, was the first huge red flag. They'd show up at these daycare centers during normal business hours, only to find locked doors, absolutely no signs of life, and most importantly, no children at all.
And this wasn't just a one-time thing. It wasn't a holiday. In one of the videos, a guy who lives in the same building as one of these daycares says he has never seen anyone, let alone a single child, ever go into or come out of that place.
So a second red flag started popping up when investigators actually did find people inside some of these places. According to the reports, when they'd ask really simple questions like, what are your enrollment numbers or how much does it cost, the staff would often get super defensive, hostile, and in some cases, even physically aggressive.
This quote here, this is from one of those viral videos where a person just asking about enrollment was allegedly grabbed and literally pushed out of the building. And critics are pointing this out, saying, look, that is just not how a legitimate business is supposed to act. But here's the thing, this isn't just about daycares, not even close. According to our sources, investigators are alleging a much broader pattern of fraud that cuts across a whole bunch of public programs, and they all seem to be following a very similar script.
Just take a look at how this breaks down. Beyond the daycares, which are allegedly billing for ghost children, the reports are pointing to massive fraud in the SNAP program. That's the Food Assistance Program. Sources are saying $17 million were stolen in just over a year. And it doesn't stop there. There are also these allegations in home health care, where people could be getting paid up to $90,000 a year to care for relatives who don't actually need it. And even nonprofits aren't immune. There's one confirmed case that exposed a $2.3 million misuse of federal funds that were supposed to be for rental assistance. The pattern here, the one being alleged, it seems systemic.
Well, as you can imagine, as all of these allegations started going viral, a political firestorm just erupted in Ohio. And it's basically pitting state lawmakers against the governor's office. So on one side, you have state lawmakers who are demanding immediate unannounced inspections. They want to freeze funding based on just the suspicion of fraud. But on the other side, the governor's office has basically responded by saying that, well, this kind of fraud has been known about for decades, calling it a cost of doing business, and insisting the state is already being as vigilant as it can be. So what's actually at stake here? Well, that phrase, cost of doing business, is being applied to a program that, according to sources, cost Ohio taxpayers over $800 million every single year. That is nearly $1 billion a year just for childcare assistance. And just when the story seems like it's contained to state and local fraud, it takes this incredible international turn. Believe it or not, the paper trail from some of these Ohio-based companies leads directly to the United Nations. Yeah, you heard that right. According to public records and reports from a deputy HHS secretary, the trail leads to one person, Abukar Dahir Osman. He's Somalia's current ambassador to the UN and even a former president of the UN Security Council.
And his history here is pretty noteworthy. Before he was a diplomat, he actually worked as a supervisor in Franklin County's adult Medicaid unit right there in Ohio. Then, after he gets his big UN appointment in 2017, public records show he was still listed as the agent for a home healthcare company in Cincinnati, a company that was later convicted of Medicaid fraud.
So, where does all of this leave us? I mean, what we're really looking at is this massive conflict between what citizen journalists are documenting on the ground and the official response that's coming from the state's highest office.
Let's just recap what this core conflict is. You've got viral videos that appear to show empty daycares. You have lawmakers who are demanding really aggressive action. You've got confirmed past fraud convictions. And then you have an official response that critics say is basically tolerating fraud, calling it a cost of doing business instead of actively fighting it.
All of this really just boils down to one final question. When the evidence that people are gathering on the ground seems to completely contradict the official story, and with hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars on the line every single year, who is ultimately responsible for finding out what the truth really is?